And this is the 5-Minute Podcast Review for Wednesday, February 28, 2018, where the idea is that most of us learn about new podcasts through simple word of mouth. No need for lengthy reviews, just a quick description, like you might get from a friend, is usually enough to know if a podcast is for you or at least worth checking out further. So that's my approach, and just to make it a bit easier, I've put the links to the 5 podcasts I go through in each episode right on your phone screen. And don't forget, especially if you're a new listener, there's over a year of back episodes to check out. I think over 170 other podcasts I've reviewed, so pretty much a guarantee of filling your podcast playlist with stuff you'll want to listen to. Of course, not every podcast is for everyone. That's the beauty of the medium. Programs don't have to be mass market, and there are a vast number of podcasts out there that brilliantly cater to niche audiences. One of them, and it's probably not too niche, but a bit niche, is the first podcast in this episode, which is the Motorcycles and Misfits podcast. The title almost says it all. Basically, each episode is a bunch of motorcycle enthusiasts sitting around a motorcycle repair garage in Santa Cruz, California, talking all things motorcycles. The garage, nicely called Recycle, was set up to get old motorcycles back on the road and is kind of a drop-in centre where enthusiasts can work on their own repairs or just hang out and even join in on the weekly podcast sessions. So aside from Lisa, the host and garage owner, we get a rotating cast of characters, and characters is the operative word, all sharing their stories and knowledge. If you're not into motorcycles or the whole motorcycle culture, Motorcycles and Misfits probably isn't the podcast for you, though. Just for the fun of it, check out episode 209, subtitled The Shit Show, with a packed garage of 15 bikers around the microphones. And I've included a link to this specific episode on your screen. Change of pace, next up is My Favourite Album with Jeremy Dillon. This podcast is entering its 5th year, with episodes coming out pretty much weekly. Each episode has the host, Jeremy Dillon, chatting with a musician or songwriter about their favourite album of all time, one that's influenced them and usually even influenced their own music. The concept sounds simple enough, but to really appreciate the value of this podcast, you need to listen to a few episodes. Jeremy Dillon really goes beyond the down-pat interview format and has genuine conversations with his guests. Now, I'm a fan of Neil Fiinn and really recommend the Neil Fiinn interview as a good entry point. I put a link to this specific episode on your screen also, and you'll hear at the very end of the episode Neil telling Jeremy, quote, "That was a really good chat," and it was, as are most of the chats. So scan the episode list, look for your favourite albums, download those episodes and see what you think of My Favourite Album with Jeremy Dillon. On to Bunny Years. So this would have been just another 2 middle-aged white guys talking shit type podcast, except for the fact that one of the guys is Macaulay Culkin. Now, I've never seen either of the Home Alone films, but like pretty much everyone, I'm familiar with the iconic image of the young Macaulay Culkin staring out in mock horror from everything from the movie posters to the DVD covers. Fast forward to more recent times, and I'm also familiar with seeing the occasional Where Are They Now type shot of a sunken-eyed, apparently drug and booze-ravaged Macaulay Culkin, and I think I've even seen the obligatory police mugshot of Culkin, but Bunny Ears is co-hosted by Macaulay Culkin's longtime friend and podcast producer, Matt Cohen, and the early episodes have been kind of interesting, even if a lot of the interest comes off the Culkin curiosity factor, with plenty of drip-fed references to Macaulay Culkin's early life as a child actor. But the podcast is definitely developing into something more than this, and if it stays around, I could see it developing a solid cult following. Both hosts come across as interesting, creatively intelligent characters who do know how to engage and hold an audience, and Macaulay Culkin sounds way more together than some of his recent paparazzi shots suggest. So that's Bunny Ears. 4th podcast this episode is Hardcore Listing with Chris and Stu. Now, I don't know what it is about lists, but there's definitely something compelling about them, and that's the basis of Hardcore Listing with Chris and Stu. Each episode throws up a top 5 list, then the hosts, Chris and Stu, usually with a guest, discuss, debate and argue out the top 5. Top 5 lists are all subjective, nothing scientific or qualified about it. Think of it as entertainment, the kind of arguments you might get into over a few beers down at the pub. So, for example, some of the lists have included the top 5 guitarists, the top 5 comedians, the top 5 drinks, the top 5 Christmas songs, the top 5 bizarre sex toys, and the top 5 chocolate bars. And if that all does sound something like the kind of argument you get into down at the local pub, it's worth noting that most episodes are indeed recorded over a few drinks, and towards the end of the episodes, it sounds like it. You might not want to listen to every episode of Hardcore Listening, but scan the episode list and see how tempting it is to download an episode with a list you've got your own strong opinions on. Okay, last podcast for this episode, and it's a new one from Vox Media called Today Explained. This is the latest addition to the genre of short daily Monday to Friday podcasts that focus on and break down a key news story of the day. In many ways, Today Explained is Vox Media's version of the New York Times The Daily Podcast. Both podcasts feature a regular host who draws upon the organisation's other specialist reporters to help flesh out and explain topics. Interestingly, Today Explained makes a feature of coming out at the end of the day, whereas the Daily from the New York Times comes out first thing in the morning. My guess is that rather than competing head-to-head for the morning commute, Vox Media has gone for the clearer space of the evening commute. Of course, depending on what time zone you're in, this could all be turned on its head. So with just over the first week of Vox's Today Explained rolled out, there is actually a fair bit of overlap with the Daily from the New York Times, with both largely focusing on aspects of the Florida school shooting and the Mueller investigation. So it'll be interesting to see how the differences between the two podcasts do or don't evolve over time, other than the fact that they bookend the news day. So that's Today Explained, and that's the podcast done for this episode. Quick reminder, we looked at the Motorcycles and Misfits podcast, my favourite album with Jeremy Dillon, Bunny Ears, Hardcore Listening with Chris and Stu, and Today Explained. Links to all are on your screen. Catch you in the next episode. Thanks for listening.